folks are getting more aware of the socialist perspective in this country. Obviously, polling shows that the youth are far more open to socialism than they've been in decades in this country. And capitalism is a far dirtier word amongst the youth, and which is not to say that it's exclusive to the youth. I think there is a greater understanding that our capitalist system as it exists now is failing. Different, I guess, prescriptions on how to fix that. But I was fascinated to read that there is a socialist case for gun control, and so give us a perspective of what. Well, first off, I guess, why should that be surprising that there's a socialist case for gun control as opposed to, I guess, what a capitalist case for gun control is?
Yeah, that's a very good question. The reason, I felt obligated to write this is because I guess in some ways it was an intervention into socialist debates on this. So somebody looking from the outside would very naturally be surprised by why do you need to make a socialist case? So I completely see the point of your question. The reason, and I have to say, it surprised me too. I mean, I did not grow up in this country. I've always been on the left, but not always on the U.S. left. So there are certain peculiarities about the left culture here, and I think in some ways it draws on the broader culture in that. So broadly speaking, on the left, some people are indifferent to the idea of gun control, and then in some pockets of what's called far left, though one can nitpick, who is the far left, etc. But let's not get into that. There is actually genuine opposition to that. Broadly, the reason people are opposed or indifferent to opposed to gun control is there is a legitimate, I think, concern about how it would be implemented if there were strong gun regulations. And what people fear is that it would be along the same lines as, say, the drug laws are implemented. So it will be criminalized. Right. It will be another set of laws on which we will see massive racist implementation. So that's one place that people come from. But, there are a couple of others. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I mean, no. Tell us where those other places come from, because sure. I think that, certainly there's a far greater, I think, awareness of the implications of the drug war along racial lines. When we look at the carceral state that we have in this country, I think it is now not terribly controversial that it seems that our prison system is set up, if not specifically in intent, certainly specifically in result, to incarcerate black people in this country in particular. And that is not controversial. So from an execution standpoint, there are concerns about a gun control regime that would be focused and racialized. What are the other concerns, broadly speaking, from the left when it comes to gun control?
So broadly speaking, the other kind of position that one hears is the real problem is not guns, but as socialists, we always should be looking for root causes. And in this case, the root causes are bigotry of different kinds, racial, homophobic, what's called toxic masculinity. So, increasingly in mass shootings, we've also seen the profile of white men. Many of them have a background in domestic violence. The Florida killer, from what we saw, was part of an anti-Semitic group. So there are these facts that emerge. So based on that, the point that is made is that it's not really the guns. What we need to address are these larger societal issues. So that's the second place where the objection's coming from.
And we should say, I mean, we should note I guess, the irony that in some ways that mirrors the right in this country's perspective, that it's not the guns, it's the people, right?
Right.
But in this instance, the argument is that because philosophically socialism is looking for the systemic problems, that those factors which are driving the people to, I guess, either own this amount of guns or to use them should be addressed. I mean, how is that different, really, from what we hear from the right in that regard?
No, you're absolutely right, and it's in fact a point that I make in my Jacobin article that, the right says it's not guns that kill people, but people kill people, and socialists of a certain kind only modify it a little bit by saying it's not guns, but it's bigoted people. The fact remains that bigoted people, minus the guns, are not killing people. So right. It's really not an argument that can stand. And while that is the case, that there is this element of, bigotry, etc., that's not really, I mean, they are looking at mass shootings. This is the other problem with these gun debates, where once again the social people who are opposed to it on the socialist side are mirroring the mass media, which is only focused on mass shootings. Because most gun deaths, everyday, gun shootings in Chicago, etc., it's not bigotry that's driving them. It's all sorts of others. Those are also societal issues of unemployment, of lack of housing, of, poverty and its manifestations in different ways. Those are the reasons because of which we have a violent culture, and that when you add guns to that, it just becomes toxic. Those are the things that's responsible. Now, as socialists, we don't say that we will wait till the overthrow of capitalism before we, before we campaign for fair housing or universal health care. We do those things. So the point that I was trying to make is, why would we then, in the case of guns, wait for the root causes to be obliterated? And in this case, bigotry. I mean, do we have to wait for that and for millions of people to be killed? Makes no sense.
And we should add, too, that you have literally thousands upon thousands of gun deaths each year are a function of suicide.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was the other thing I was going to say, that there are literally 2/3 of gun deaths outside of mass shootings are suicides.
And I would...
one can make the case that somebody who's intent on killing themselves would do it anyway. But it's not, I thought about it. It's not quite true.
Well, the data is that it's not quite true. I mean, the number of successful suicides perpetrated by a gun far outweigh other forms of suicides.
Exactly.
And there's not as much opportunity for intervention. I could also mention that year after year, we see toddlers killing more people because they get access to these guns because they're so ubiquitous. All right, well, listen, Nivedita, we need to take a break. When we come back, we have now talked about the reasons why you felt compelled to offer a socialist case for gun control. When we come back, we will talk, in fact, about that socialist case for gun control. My name is Sam Seder. This is Ring of Fire Radio. We'll be right back after this.